You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio, featuring the Interactive Interview, courtesy of WrestlingEpicenter.com. Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio. Joining us on the Newsmaker line is a wrestling veteran, an AEW security guard, and a guy who, I gotta tell you, I saw take a blow to the face that made me cringe, and he went on with the show and put on the match. And I gained such a respect for this guy just a few weeks ago at PCW, Arizona, live on Broadway. I'm speaking of Gabriel Gallo. Mr. Gallo, are you on the phone with me?
Yeah, I'm here. How you doing today?
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. How are you feeling, by the way, after the incident?
I'm feeling better now. It was a rough couple weeks after it happened, but it's fine now. I managed to heal up pretty well, considering.
I could hear in the sound of your voice you might be a little bit like embarrassed by it, but you shouldn't be, because that was like those pictures that you got out of it were some of the most badass pictures that you could ever ask for, and it totally was accidental, and it's amazing. For those who don't know, what happened was you swing the chain around your head, kind of like, maybe a little bit like Hercules Hernandez, for those old school wrestling fans like me. And unfortunately, you had that David Lee Roth incident where it hit you, and unfortunately really hurt you. And you know, it was a shot. I guess again, you're doing okay though after that.
Yeah, what had actually happened, what's the most embarrassing about it was me. It was all me. It was 100% me. But it was because the ring there for PCW Arizona is a higher ring than what I'm normally used to sliding into. So I had to jump up to slide in, and as I rolled over, the chain hit the mat and bounced off the mat and struck me square in the eyeball.
Wow. Okay.
And it exploded my contact. I have glass permeables. They're basically like they're a synthetic. They're harder than glass is what they are, and they shattered in my eye.
Wow! Oh God! I had no idea it was that serious. Wow!
So I had broken glass bits in my eye from the
during that entire match.
Yeah, for that entire match, I couldn't. I thought, honestly, like I've thought about it and I've watched the tape back. I think the first minute, I don't think I really knew where I was at. I have never been hit that hard in my life, and I've been hit hard. And I've never, if that was a fist, it would have been the hardest hit I've ever taken in my life. And I remember coming to, like, I think around the time me and Draco started tying up, but I didn't even know I was bleeding till halfway through the match. And by that time, I thought that it wasn't, I thought my contact had just gotten knocked loose, like when I was coming to, but then I thought my eye was gone.
Oh my God.
When I saw the blood. But it was just bits of shattered glass were all pierced inside my eyeball and everything, and I had to go to the hospital afterwards, and they dug it out. It took like 3.5 hours. Yeah.
And I'll tell, for the interest of those who don't know, I was literally sitting in front of your daughter. Your daughter is the sweetest kid in the world. She was talking to my wife throughout the beginning of the show, and I mean, hearing her kind of calling for daddy during that was really heart-wrenching. So it made it, I mean, as a fan, you know, from the Mark perspective, it made it an amazing match to watch. And knowing that you powered through that, man, that gained me a whole lot of respect for you. So kudos to you for powering through.
Well, I figured it was our 6-year anniversary. There was over 1,600 paid people in there. Everybody on that show, I had my hand in training at some point, if not trained all the way. And it was 6 years of all their hard work. Well, my eye was already gone. What did I care? It's the show must go on. And I figured I wasn't going to get out of that ring unless I was in a body bag. Not with that many people paid, with all the hard work that my kids did to get there. So what kind of example would that be?
Absolutely. And after the show, I was asking people, I would say, hey, do we know how he's doing? And they're like, oh, we don't know. We'll post it on the website. So I'm glad that we got the word from you, from the horse's mouth, as they say. So I'm glad you're doing okay now, though. And how is the eye now? Is the patch still on there, or were you able to get that off?
It comes and goes. My eye is rebuilding. So it did do a lot of damage, but
holy crap.
But it's not going to stop me. So I power through it when I have to, and then other times I let it rest underneath the patch. it's very light sensitive right now, and it's got some damage to it. But I go to the doctor every week, and they're keeping progress on it.
Awesome. Well, I promise we won't just talk about that horrible incident, and we'll talk a little bit about what brought you to this wild world of pro wrestling in the first place. What attracted you to pro wrestling?
I grew up in a small town, and all of my friends, we all watched it, and we all beat each other up on the courthouse square doing wrestling moves. So I had wanted to do it since I was a little kid. Same story as every other wrestler. I wanted to do it since I was a kid. I just got given the opportunity to meet some people and train after a while, which was very hard actually out here in Arizona, since there was no wrestling here in Arizona.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. Believe me, I know.
But I lucked out. I was blessed enough to meet the right people after a few mishaps, but I wound up running into meeting Navajo Warriors, and
yes, sir.
Mike Knox and Luther Reigns, Horseshoe, and CC Star, and everybody, and they were all, the ones that trained me, took it upon themselves to train me.
Very
cool. 2000.
Very cool. I was in the Championship Wrestling from Arizona show that they did out here in Mesa, and I was in the bathroom, and I came out of the stall, and there was Navajo Warrior putting on his regalia and his paint, and I thought, whoa, I don't want to mess with this guy. He's still, to this day, one of the most imposing-looking guys that you'll see on any Arizona wrestling show. And what was one of the lessons that you took away from Navajo? Because he's kind of a local legend around here.
Nav trained the majority of the guys that restarted wrestling out here. Like, a lot of people don't really realize, I think, that he trained Knox, and he trained Luther Reigns, and that he had a hand in helping train Cena and a bunch of other guys. So when I started, he actually trained me to be his tag partner. So I was on the road with Nav for three and a half years straight. And then I wound up teaming up with him again in like 07 to 08. Nav and I are like we're brothers pretty much. So we have a long sordid history of all kinds of stuff. But I would like to think that nowadays, in my old age, I'm probably more like Nav than I'm not. In a lot of ways, especially in the helping of young guys. Like, Nav was the guy that always helped everybody, and if you wanted to get signed, you wrestled Navajo, and people would watch that match, and you would wind up probably with a contract. So, like, Nav's always been like the version of a worker that I always wanted to be, as far as able to work with anybody.
Absolutely.
And make anybody look good.
I agree. And, you came in, we're around the same age. I'm just a little bit younger than you, but we're around the same age. And you broke in right at the wrong time. Right at the time that, WCW was going away. ECW closed up shop. There's so many options that could have been there for you had you started just a few years earlier. Was that something that you kind of look back at and think, man, if only my timing was a little bit better?
Kind of. Like, I didn't exactly get in right at the. I did get in at the end of it, but I was in for like 3 years before everything really came crashing down.
Yeah.
So like I got my fair share. We got our tryouts, and we got flown all over the country and all over the world. Yeah, I do think about that, like how bad it sucked, because a lot of guys nowadays don't understand. Like, after 9/11, everything just started dropping. And by 2004, man, it was so, especially with the buyout, and every WCW wrestler that had been under contract, and ECW wrestler was out on the streets. And if they weren't under WWF contract by then, or WWE contract, they were out wrestling and taking up all the money on the indies, what little there was. And there was no drawing. I call those years the hobbyist years, because it was so hard to make money. And like, I pride myself at what little money I made, and the fact that I got to stay busy and active. Like, I was wrestling every single weekend, 2 to 3 times a weekend, that entire time, getting flown out and everything, with no TV time and nobody knowing who you are. I kind of consider that a feat on my own right. A lot of guys don't understand now. Like you said, it was a rough time there for about 10 years.
Yep.
Until really until 2018, 2017, it started picking up really good. And then, honestly, after COVID, as bad as COVID was, the business exploded after COVID. Now there's so many places that are paying, and so many places that are going to go work. You can get seen. It's almost too much. You almost get lost in the shuffle. There's so much opportunity.
Absolutely. And it is for, a guy like me who's been watching since about 85. I was 4 years old when I found pro wrestling. I've been watching a long time. It's great to see that there is so many places for guys to work. And we mentioned it early on that you work for AEW now. You are a security guard. You're there, and I got to tell you, if people haven't seen you, they got to Google a picture of you because you're not a guy to mess with. How did you end up working in security for one of the largest wrestling promotions in the entire world?
That was just pure dumb luck, honestly, to tell you the truth. One of my friends was working here, and I just got a phone call out of the blue and asked if I wanted to come do something for a weekend, and they needed help, and I said, sure. And they liked me, and it just went on from there, and that was about it. Yeah, and it's just been a good job ever since. I've been employed with them for about going on 2 years now, and it's been a good time. Everybody's great, and yeah.
What's the experience?
Travel and not take any bumps. That's
there
the best
you go.
part. And I did security for years. It's not like I started out cold. I used to run all the Toby Keith security for all the Toby Keith restaurants around the country. Mm-hmm. I did that the whole time I was wrestling. Me and Derek Nykirk, who was a former WWE wrestler too. We both ran that. In fact, Val Venus worked for us. And at a time, every wrestler that was worth a shit in Phoenix would work for us too. I would give everybody a job.
That's awesome. Honestly,
funny story. Side note, real quick, is when I ran the one in Folsom, and Jeff Cobb came and worked for me when he first started.
Wow, really? That's awesome.
There's actually quite a few people around the country that worked for me to get side money when they needed it.
That's funny. I went to a show at a Toby Keith restaurant, a concert there. That's pretty cool. Who knows? Maybe you were working security and I just didn't know it.
I probably was. I ran them all, so.
That's awesome. All right. So you mentioned Arizona, and I'm a guy, I was blessed to grow up, unfortunately, in the shadows of New York City before I moved here in 2000. And when I moved here, like you said, wrestling was scarce, especially if you compare New York, New Jersey area where you couldn't find a place that wasn't having a wrestling show somewhere around town. And now, there's nothing to be had. Now it's changed. Now it's changed because there's so many people, which, obviously there's pros and cons to that. There's, I kind of miss the old town Arizona feel, but there is a lot of people here now. Is there definitely more of a market, in your opinion, for independent wrestling to succeed in Arizona with the new population numbers?
Well, obviously, our PCW Arizona proved it.
Yes.
Ever since we came back in with the Rebirth show after COVID, we've consistently drawn increasing. The shows have increased by numbers every single show, building up into that show. But not just us. There's a lot, like you said, there's a lot of other wrestling going on in Arizona. Like you said, I started in 2000, and we were the first wrestling company with Western States Wrestling to open up out here in like 10 or 20 years. And watching from crowds of like 10 people then over the years to now where it's at, it's a complete night and day story. There's actually a wrestling market out here now. There's actually an independent wrestling scene. Even the shows that the other shows out there are drawing, probably pretty well. I wouldn't know. I don't go to them. I only go to ours.
Yep. We could say the letters. Impact Zone Wrestling. I remember they were running a place called The Sets in Tempe, and the problem with the sets was if you stood on the top rope, your head hit the roof. So there was a.
I was there too. I was in IZW that whole time when we were.
I know. Yep. I was the guy who was supposed to do a live radio broadcast from the show, and the freaking station I was on, I was doing the ASU radio station at the time.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't get a single person in the entire radio crew to man the whatever you want to call it, the machines at the actual place while I did it from a location. Such a disappointment, and I think I made everybody there mad because it really screwed everything up. But oh well, that's ancient history.
That's wrestling. It's always like that. But even then, so you remember then, like the Sets was probably drawing the best wrestling crowds consistently at that time. It was really the only company I think besides NWA Rising Phoenix before they combined, and that was only, I think, the biggest crowd we ever had was me against Triple X for the title, and it was like 300 people, and that place was packed. That was it. There was no wrestling scene back then. Now, hell, now it's, you're right, it's a completely different thing. the crowds back then are like filler crowds for a lot of the companies out here now.
Very cool. And yourself and Dom Vitale, and you got to include Wolfgang in there too. There's a lot of guys that are helping to train.
There's a lot of guys out there.
Yeah, they're trying. You guys though are training the next generation of stars, and with the Arizona Pro Wrestling School. And did you want to talk a little bit about the academy and where people can find out more information to maybe get their foot in the door in the world of professional wrestling in this area?
Oh yeah, so I train over at the Arizona Pro Wrestling Training Academy. We had the training. I'm getting tongue tied. I apologize.
Me too.
Arizona Pro Wrestling Training Center, and we use the hashtags TrainingAZ. Anytime you look on Instagram or Facebook, you can literally search the hashtags TrainingAZ. It's the easiest way to find us. We do a couple tryouts throughout the year for classes. Everybody on PCW Arizona, for the most part, that's a mainstay, has all come from the TrainingAZ school. Between me, Don Vitale, Max is another trainer there, Hammerstone Graves. There's a whole lot of people that go up in there and help train the kids. Classes help train people. Everybody that also has come up in there has also gone back in there to help start training people. So there's a lot of generations of trainers in there. And it's all hard work. Everything in there is earned. So if you want to learn how to be a real pro wrestler and get everything and earn everything, we're the place to go. We're known as the place where you actually have to work around town.
Yeah, I had Wolfgang on a few months ago, and he mentioned that you guys even have ties to WWE in some ways, and you guys kind of model what you do at least a little bit around what they do in the Performance Center to give guys the right mindset and the right things to do while learning to do this.
Well, wrestling is wrestling, just whether it's individual or the business itself, is a constantly evolving thing. So you have to pay attention to what's going on around you. So yeah, we pay attention to how other places train, whether it's the Performance Center or other schools. I pay attention to what I do, at what is hot or what's not, basically, and what I see, and then we constantly are adapting our training protocol to match what is needed in the world today. Wrestling is constantly training or changing. If you try to wrestle the same way you did in the 80s now, might not be, not even as widely received. People might not know how to work with it. So we have to be able to train people to adapt with everything the way the times are. And I think we've been good at it. All of our guys are in high demand, guys and gals.
Absolutely.
They're always, everybody always tells me how good they are to work with, how they're always disciplined, how they listen, they keep their promises, they do what they say, and in the ring they're always safe. And that's what we always preach at the school, all those things. Be a good person and preach safety in the ring.
Very cool. I'm just a longtime fan who's been blessed to do these kind of podcasts for 22 years, and I kind of feel bad that I didn't find you guys sooner. I found you guys for the July show. I was at the July one, and then I was at the one in September as well. And man, I would love seeing what these guys are and what they, obviously, a lot of them are, as they say, puppies with big paws. They had a lot to grow into. And I see that especially with Devin Reno and Class and Joey Hendricks. There's a lot of really good young talent that I can't wait to see what they ultimately become.
I'm super jealous of most of them because, I think about, you asked me before, am I jealous about or upset about how the times were in wrestling back when I was coming up? I think this is what I'm really jealous about. All these guys have such we have a good ring, we have good training centers, we have all this stuff now. And they're light years ahead of where I was at the same time in the business in the same amount of years. And I'm sitting there jealous going, man, I had to go wrestle in all these crappy rings and train in backyards because there was nobody could ever afford a building. And we had to blow the dust off the mats. And these guys are training and wrestling in front of 500 plus crowds. I'd be lucky if I wrestled in front of 50. Their 3 years is equivalent to my 7 at the time. It's what the hell?
There you go.
But that's what we all work for, so that they would have opportunities like that.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the change in the style of wrestling, and I'm a old school fan. I can sit down right now and I could watch stuff from the 80s, that you mentioned the 80s, and I'll still be riveted by it. I'll still, love those characters and love those guys. We went through a lot of phases from when you started to where we're at now. Hardcore really became in vogue, and the AEW roster, you could argue that the majority of that roster is more of a light heavyweight style. What is your thoughts on the changing of professional wrestling from the bigger guys that were around when you and I were young guys watching, and to what it is now, where there's so many different styles and maybe even a little bit more high fly and smaller guys than there was before?
I'm really old school, so it's hard for me in some aspects because as much as I put a lot of guys over for being super athletic and being able to do stuff I could never possibly, hell, anybody I knew coming up with couldn't possibly even think about doing. But I still miss the days of the stories and the ability to tell a story through body part work in the ring without having to kill yourself. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I know, like you said, wrestling's changed, so it's really cool when I see people able to combine the two. And that's really what I work for these days. I try to do with training the kids is guys like MJF, who was great at old school telling a story, but then he can match anybody in the ring should he have to.
Yep.
With any style, but he doesn't necessarily do that. He sticks to his own style even when he is matching them, and that's something I respect and I like. I like guys that do that. Guys like Joe, who is a huge man. We were talking about the light heavyweight style versus the heavyweight style. He's a huge man, but he can move like a lightweight, but he doesn't do the 10 million things in a row like a lightweight would. He still sticks to being a big man. So that's a good combo in my book. You look at Joe and you get legitimately scared when he comes out because you're like, this guy's going to beat the shit out of me.
Joe is going to kill you. Yeah, that's the chance.
Kill you. You know what I mean? And he's athletic enough that he can do anything. So I respect all the styles, but I like the guys that can do that. As far as wrestling anymore, it has turned more into a lightweight style, and I think a lot of that is due to the hobbyist years, where I hate to say it, a lot of guys that normally would have been sitting in the front row got allowed into wrestling, and then they became trainers themselves when they were half trained, which just kept letting. And I'm not saying anything against small guys because there's a lot of talented small guys.
Oh yeah.
But it used to be way stricter back in the day, and you had to put size on. Even if you were smaller, you had to actually make yourself look like a wrestler to be accepted. And
right.
Nowadays that's kind of slipped away, but it's also kind of slipping back, I think, with the more and more televised or more events that get televised besides WWE, AEW, NWA. There, a lot of the indies are getting televised, either in the local markets or they're being televised on streaming networks or the internet streaming networks like Fight TV and stuff. And honestly, especially now with it being so over inundated, you almost need to have the guys start really building their bodies again to be something to attract eyes to, because no matter how much you like mediocrity, which I always say wrestling it became very mediocre for a while, you're always going to be attracted by the things that you are not. You can have the guy that you relate to because he looks like he would be mowing your lawn and he's a friendly guy and you can have a barbecue with him, but you're always going to look at the guy that looks like he might be a superhero in disguise. Because it's something that you're not, and it's something that or it's something that's like held up on a pedestal almost. You know what I mean? Because they seem so much special. And I think that's coming around with heavyweight wrestling too, because I've been noticing the more and more heavyweights that do wrestle, when they wrestle heavyweight style, they get a huge reaction anymore from the crowd.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's because it's not seen all the time, whereas the light heavyweight style is being seen so much. And every match a lot of the times is the same. No matter how athletic it is, it loses that draw because it's just like you'll see it the next match, you'll see it 3 matches from now, you'll see it next week. But then you sometimes see these big guys again, and you're not going to see it all the time. So it gets a huge reaction. So I think it is going to start going more back towards the older style, and you're going to start seeing big bodies again. Mm-hmm. Because in my opinion, wrestling is cylindrical. So it went through the cycle of little guys, and now it's going back into a bigger TV mold, and more people are going to start having bodies again, and it's going to attract the monsters. Sell tickets. Monsters sell tickets.
I agree. Like I said, I grew up in New Jersey, and I got to see ECW kind of come on, and then from ECW, you got to see the guys that wore the oversized T-shirts to hide their unimpressive bodies and all that stuff. And then you kind of see it now with the guys. I'm going to say it. Look at Class. Class looks like an athlete. He's a star when he walks in the room because he looks like an athlete. That's why the guys that I've requested for interviews, the majority of the ones that I see are the ones that I look at. And I'm like, that guy I can see on TV. That guy is a huge star in the making. And
and you gotta look the part that you want to play.
Exactly.
Now the era you're talking about, it was cool for the shirts then because, well, for one, they were all 300 pounds still, so they were still monsters. But like you were saying, like we were saying about before, it wasn't really seen a lot of, so it was kind of new.
That's right.
So that was kind of cool to be regular for a while, but now it's back to what wrestling. I think it's going back to what wrestling should be, and that's everybody wants to see a superhero or a supervillain or the monster of the comic books. You know what I mean?
Very cool. Somebody we don't talk about much, and I don't know why I haven't had him on, but I talked to him quite a bit the first time I went to a show, was Dom Vitale. And Dom is a big part of what you guys are doing with the Train in AZ, as well as Phoenix Championship Wrestling. What's your relationship with him, and what do you think of his approach to training the boys?
I've known Dom since I think we met in 2008. 2009, he started coming to the shows when he first got out of college. He had already been trained out in New York by Shockwave the Robot, but he had taken time off to go to school, and he came out to Arizona, and that's when I met him. And I started breaking him back into the ring and retraining him in some stuff. And Dom quickly became one of my favorite people in the world, especially when he started hanging out with Frenchie Riviera. And then they quickly became my biggest feud in wrestling for a couple years. And then me and Dom started teaming in like 2010 or 11, and we've been the tag team ever since. He's my brother, man. As much as I want to punch him in his face, I love that guy to death. He's been my best friend. He's been my tag partner. He's always been there when I need him. Like for what is it, since we started beating the hell out of each other, I think in 2009, and now it's going to be 2005 soon. So that's a hell of a long relationship in wrestling.
Yes,
especially to stay tag partners for 90% of it. And he's the owner of the school, along with Wolfgang, and they started PCW Arizona. And then Dom brought me in to be one of the trainers when they first opened the school up. And then for the first couple of years, he and I were the only two trainers out of school for, I think, the first 2 years of its existence. So we've gone through a lot together. I love that guy. As much as I want to slap him.
Well, like I said, I was at the AEW show at the Footprint Center, and I was at this show, and there's a small difference in size, not as big as you might think, but there was a lot of people at the Phoenix Championship Wrestling show. Do you get the urge when you're on the road with AEW to kind of say, "Put me in, coach. I can have a match. Could you put me in?"
That's why I got Phoenix Championship Wrestling at home.
Okay. No desire to do that.
These guys on TV. I'm an old man now. I got my own chin blew my eye up. These guys will put me in the hospital within the first day. Canadian Destroyer, what? Hell no.
There you go.
But, no, I mean, I got the itch always, but it's more so to be at the school and train the guys and make them get better, because that's my itch now. I want to see everybody get to farther places than I ever could get. And so going into the shows in Phoenix and wrestling there and helping those guys out and training when I'm in town at the school, that's more important to me, and that's my itch now than I've ever had itching, to wrestle in the ring.
That's awesome.
Giving back like that. I've had 25 years. I've traveled the world. I wrestled some of the greatest in different places around the world. It's their time now.
That's awesome.
Well,
like I said, I was at that show, and when that injury happened and you powered through, it kind of made me, even though I obviously knew who you were in advance, maybe do the YouTube deep dive and kind of watch a lot of your stuff that's out there. And it's a pleasure to have had you on. Where could people find more information about Gabriel Gallo and keep up with you?
I'm most active on Instagram. It's at the King of No Rules. I'm pretty sure you can find me on all the platforms like that. I got a Twitter too, and Facebook, pretty much just, I think it's always under King of No Rules, but Instagram's what I'm usually on. I like pictures.
Well, like I said, it was the total mishap that caused you to kind of come on my radar. But I don't think there's a single person that was in that crowd that saw you power through that's ever going to doubt what a tough son of a gun you are after seeing that. So, and knowing what I know now, man, that was amazing to see.
Yeah, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but most people would have quit, and that's why they would be way smarter than me. But like I said, the worst thing's already over. It's time to go to work. So.
There you go. And Phoenix Championship Wrestling, by the way, is going to be returning in November. I will have all the details on that upcoming show, which will be headlined by a steel cage match, which is very cool for a local indie to get the opportunity to put on a cage match, and I can't wait to see it. So I'll be there, and hopefully you will be too.
Yeah, sounds good. I don't know what my schedule is that day, but we'll find out.
All right. Hey, before I let you go, do you mind if I ask for just an old school ID? Just saying this is Gabriel Gallo, and you're listening to the Wrestling Epicenter?
Yeah, no problem. Just go right now?
I was going to say, yeah, I always tell you this to people, and I'm realizing how old I'm getting, because I always say, do you want me to do the Wayne's World countdown? And then I'm realizing some of these kids that I'm interviewing were born like 8 years after Wayne's World came out. So they probably don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But okay, do you want me to do the whole Wayne's World countdown?
Sure, why not?
All right, in 5, 4, 3.
This is the King of No Rules, Gabriel Gallo, and you're listening to the Wrestling Epicenter.
This is Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Interactive Wrestling Radio. Interactive Wrestling Radio. Interactive Wrestling Radio. Interactive Wrestling Radio. Interactive Wrestling Radio. Oh, rush.
Featuring the interactive interview.
Interactive interview. Interactive interview. Interactive interview. Interactive interview. Interactive interview. Interactive interview. Oh, yeah.
Formerly The Blaze.
The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze rock.
You maniacs, so what you gonna do when a Blaze of Mania runs wild on you?
On WrestlingEpicenter.com.
Wrestling Epicenter.
Wrestling
Epicenter. Wrestling
Epicenter.
Wrestling Epicenter.
Wrestling Epicenter. The Wrestling Epicenter. Don't get off.
And now we shamelessly name drop from our history.
The Wrestling Epicenter would like to apologize for the following.
All right, everybody. Viva la raza. Viva la raza.
Hey, y'all.
Hello, ladies.
Hey guys, we had a lovely conversation.
First lady.
Absolutely. Oh, look at me. She's so kooky.
Be there. Where else?
Interactive
Wrestling Radio.
Wrestling.
Epicenter.
Oh my God, you win! Love being interactive.
I was gonna shoot him. Yeah, I almost pissed my pants. Breaking neck. I got 2 words for you. I've heard a lot about you guys. But here, let's go. I see my language. You're gonna go to the shop. I see him now. We're into the many.
No nerves.
That was great. It's gonna be cool. What it's all about. The purest point of view. The living legend. Rock and roll. Arrogant.
You're listening to me.
Instead of statement, I'm talking to you.
So lonely without you.
In the land of extreme.
Testify. Nevermore. Interactive interview. I'm not just the best. Interactive interview with a plastic
You
head.
earned the right.
Nobody. You better keep listening. Thank you very much. Controversy creates cash. Professional
Made
wrestling.
in the USA, baby.
Memphis wrestling. The guy on fire.
I'm not
gonna
We were sexy.
What a show.
One and only.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Wrestling Epicenter.
Interactive interview. We took care of the business. This isn't ballet. We are huge. You're where it's at. You gotta recognize who's the best. If you're smart, make sure you tune in each and every week. I'll come out of your computer, knock down your door, and turn it on for you. Or else I'm gonna kick your stinking teeth in. And that's the bottom line.
Have a nice day.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.